Okay, so now that we have our comment entity, we've got our comment DTO, and we've created our handler so that we can create comments. Now let's tell our application that we want to support SignalR. So what we'll need to do, we'll need to open up our startup class, and we're going to add SignalR as a service inside our dependency injection container. So I'm just going to pick a suitable point inside the services. I've mentioned before, the ordering in here really doesn't matter. And what we need to do here is say services and add SignalR. Now we've got two options here, and they're both available via our shared packages that we get with .NET Core 3.0, and we're going to go for the add SignalR. The SignalR core is just the minimum essential services, but we actually need to go for the SignalR one here to make it easier for us to configure this. And we don't need to provide this with any additional configuration. Now what we're going to do, we're going to create a chat hub very shortly, and this is going to provide the routing so that our routes know where to redirect these SignalR requests to. So I'm going to scroll down to where we're setting up our endpoints, and we need to add a new endpoint in here. Now our routing knows all about the routes that are provided by our controllers. But because we're going to use SignalR, SignalR is going to act as an endpoint for that type of communication. So what we need to do is we need to add an additional endpoint configuration here. So we'll say endpoints, and then what we can say is map hub. And this is going to map incoming requests with the specified path to the specified SignalR hub. So we'll go for this one. And we haven't created it yet, but we will do. This is going to be a chat hub that we're going to create, and then we just need to give this a route, and we'll keep the route pretty simple. We'll just go for /chat. So whenever a request comes into this particular endpoint or this URL, then it's going to know to redirect this request to our chat hub, and we'll go ahead and create this chat hub now. So inside the API project, because this is going to be equivalent to an API controller, what we're doing here, but we're not going to create an API controller for this. We're going to create a SignalR hub instead. So I'm just going to create a new folder in the API, and I'm just going to call it SignalR. And inside here we create a new C# class, and we'll just call this chat hub and press return. And inside our chat hub, this is going to derive from hub, which we get from SignalR. So we'll bring in ASP.NET Core SignalR. And what we'll also do, because we want to send the creation of a comment to our create handler, we'll also bring in mediator into this as well. So we'll generate a constructor, and we'll inject mediator in, just as we've been doing in our API controllers. So I'll bring in iMediator and call it mediator, and we'll need to say using mediator, and we'll just initialize the field from the parameter, and I can take out this dot. And what we want to do in here is create a new method. So it's going to be a public async task, and I'm going to call it send comments. And just like any of our API methods, I'm going to send the create command, and I'll need to bring in application comments, and be careful here because we've got the same name. Because I'm using simple names for our classes, make sure we bring in the namespace for application comments here, and then we want to send our command, and we'll also need to bring in system threading tasks in here as well. So the idea of this, and specifically what this method is called, whereas in our API controllers, and if I just go to our activities controller for comparison, in our activities controller, it doesn't matter what we call this in the name of the method. The only thing that's important inside our controller is the route and the route parameters and the type of request. So an HTTP GET with an ID is going to hit this particular method, and it doesn't matter if it's called details or not. We're not using that to make the connection to our API. It's the route and the route parameters and the HTTP request type that defines which route we hit when we make a request to our API endpoint. Inside our chat hub, this name of this method is what we're going to use from our client side to invoke this particular method. And what we'll do inside here is we're going to need to get our username. And we're going to need to get this from the hub context. Now it's not quite available yet, but it will be after we've done what we're going to do after this. But our username we're going to get from the hub context. So we'll say hub context.user, and we'll add the question mark and claims, question mark, and first or default. And just like in our getting it from our HTTP context, we'll do the same thing. And we'll say x.type is equal to claim types, and we'll need to bring in system security claims dot name identifier, add again the question mark and value. And then what we want to do is add our username to our command which we're sending to our create handler. So we'll say command.username equals username. And then what we'll do is we'll say var comment equals await mediator.send, and then we'll send a command. And then what we want to do is send this comment to any clients that are connected to this particular chat hub. So we'll say await clients.all, and we'll say send async, and then we give the method a name, and in this case I'm just going to call it receive comment, and we'll pass in the comments. So the idea is that our client invokes the send comment, which then goes ahead and sends our command to our mediator handler. All the logic happens in our handler, and we get back the comment after it's been saved to our database. And then this comment is sent to all of the clients that are connected to our hub. But what we also need to do is deal with lists, and what we need to make available is our token to our hub context. And we'll take a look at what we need to do to achieve that next.